Hey everyone, welcome to another great podcast. We're so happy to have you here. Jenn Foster's here with me. Hey, Jenn.
Hey everyone, how's it going today?
I hope you're having a fantastic day. Listen, we're all about entrepreneurship, the journey, life's journey. Think about if you were in an industry, let's say the oil industry, how do you transition from oil to champagne? Holy cow, that's a big different types of oil, right? I mean, that's like a lot more fun, make you feel good. So we are really thankful we have entrepreneur Matthew Massey with us today. He is the founder and starter of Champagne Madam Zero. So not only are we going to talk about like a healthier way to have champagne today, but we're going to talk about how do you start a company from ground up, come up with the idea, and just walk us through those steps and really what is the hustle to get there. Matthew, thanks so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, tell us, Matthew, how you got started in the champagne industry, and if you want to tell a little bit of how you got into the industry before that, you can go into that too.
Absolutely. So, I grew up in Galveston with a lot of love, but not a lot of money, and very kind of organic background growing up on the beach there. Hospitality is a natural transition when you're growing up, when you're looking to purchase that first car. So ultimately I started off in the valet business. Actually, that was one of my jobs after initially starting out with some early days roles around 15 years old in the restaurants. I moved into valet, which is my dream job. I love vehicles. Everyone always asks how I got into champagne. I say, if Sandra Bullock in a Bentley led me there. One time I had Sandra Bullock come in about 3 months into this valet career, and it was my turn to valet. I ended up taking their luggage up to the room. They wanted to go downtown, and subsequently I took them in the Bentley, and with no incident, everything went great. But when I came back, turned those keys in, I thought that it was going to be a night where, I'd get a great compliment, but ultimately it got back that I took the Bentley. I didn't have insurance on the car. There was no manager working that night. So that was the first and only job I got fired from. And ultimately, with that, it really led me directly into the hospitality industry, where I started working with a little Italian restaurant. I learned to know everything I could about Italian wines. And that was really how I was going to be able to afford that first vehicle, was to learn and sell great wines. Segue that really into moving to Houston, getting my education, moved toward working with a wine distributor. And my best friend in parallel was working on his master sommelier at the time. And him and I both decided, growing up in Galveston, not being able to travel, really due to funds growing up, we decided we wanted to see all the great terroirs of the wine world. But really quickly, I concluded after interviewing with these wine companies, these wine distribution companies, that ultimately the biggest challenge was the amount of hours worked and the pay. And I decided that oil and gas was really going to be the right route for me. So from there, I worked for about a year and a half to try to find the right role. All the roles that I did in oil and gas were essentially focused on international business. And that's how I was able to continue this exploration of my passion, which ultimately is the world of wine. So from South Africa to Italy, which is where my best friend, the gent that was studying for that master somm, it's where he has property now in Piemonte. They're in the beautiful land of Barbera and Barbaresco. And ultimately, I spent about 10 years focusing on champagne as I was doing business, really in and out of France. So, that's ultimately what drove me in that direction, is this passion for wine, this business that really was able to help fuel my travels, which is international business in oil and gas. And ultimately, I made that segue full time. As I say, I retired from oil and gas to work 2 to 3 times as much about 6 months ago.
So how do you go from idea, like, you come up with this idea about a new type of champagne, and explain to us, exactly what Champagne Madam Zero is and how you came up with the concept to start to make those first steps to make it a reality?
So one of the interesting things is this really started off as a passion project. There's 319 villages in Champagne, and I wanted to focus in on singularity and really understanding each of the individual villages. So this wasn't something I was trying to commercialize or turn into a business from day one. I really was just, essentially a champagne really an enthusiast. And I really wanted to understand the different terroirs. And that really led me into understanding and appreciating really the art of quality, precision, and singularity. So I got about 3 years into this journey and decided that there was really nothing in the market that really had the right style, the right level of quality. And then me personally, I'm big into fitness and nutrition. I wanted to get away from any additives, particularly around the sugars. And the only way really to do this was to do a very focused and very unique project. And that really led into looking at a lot of the different aspects that you do as an entrepreneur to ensure that you're going to have a sound commercial model, that you can get all the pieces of the project right, which you have to be involved in every part of the process in order to ensure that you have excellent execution. But at the same time, there's always going to be challenges that you're able to refine with time.
Yeah. And so you said, so 6 months ago is when you finally just started focusing on champagne only. How was that transition? Like, how did you, was it just like overnight, or did it take a while to be like, okay, this is the day that it's going to be where I don't do gas and oil anymore?
Yeah, it's a great question because people don't really think about the overlap, because this was one of the most challenging periods of my life. Working a full-time vice president job for 1.5 years in parallel, hiring a team, scaling the business, working in and out of France, trying to manage it all. And it was very daunting. But, I did that for nearly 1.5 years with the product in the market. I did it for several years before we came into market. And it really heightened to the point of early in the year, I could just tell it was time. And it was just really challenging to manage balance. And the business needed me so much that it required a lot of travel, which is what I'm doing right now, a lot of travel out of my home city here as we grow the brand. So with any business, you can always tell you're always bursting at the seams when you need to hire a new employee. Every hour that goes by, you need that employee. In my business, every hour that went by, I knew that it needed those probably 80+ hours a week of me, as opposed to getting, potentially a fraction of that at certain periods.
So when you're launching a product, tell us, do you have a marketing plan? Are you been playing it by ear and kind of organically seeing what you have to do? Or what is your strategy for advertising, marketing the product?
So from the beginning, there's a few things there. One was really to focus in, essentially, as I'll say, on 3 distinct pillars that I think make our brand, I think, very strong in the areas that we're focused, as we're really trying to build a kind of I'd say a foundational focus, as build a cultural following in these specific markets with a cultural foundation. And the ways that we really, achieve that, are very organic. I think they are very impactful in terms of getting the retention of customers, because anyone can have a great package. We believe we have a beautiful package, but we believe what's inside that package is far more beautiful than the exterior of that product. So people knowing a bit of the story, knowing why we're zero sugar, because of the quality of the champagne, and why, ultimately we're ultra low sugar, but ultra low sugar, 0.3 grams for a Blanc de Blanc. It's lower carbs, lower calories, but it doesn't really just come down to that. It's all about the quality, the aging 4 times longer than normal champagne, where we grow the fruit, the age of the vines. There's a lot of layers to essentially developing this level of quality. So the focus has been on these pillars of really focusing in on our retail partners, with having an exceptional team that does tastings very much on a regular basis, and from an organic standpoint, introduces the product. There's also a lot of our phenomenal restaurant partners, and we have some of the most amazing restaurant partners that have supported us through this journey, both fine dining and some that aren't as upscale. But we, building the relationship with the staffs, continuing the training, having the very best training in the industry for the staff members, having them introduce the champagne night after night, that's really what has resonated. And then there's other pillars to marketing. There's also the exterior pillars of looking at specifically at PR over billboard advertising, over this big brand advertising, where you're either going to get a one-off selection of that product where someone buys it just because they see it all the time and then they don't really know about it. And they only buy it for an occasion, or maybe they don't ever buy it again. So there's trying to not do what everybody else is doing, but it takes a bit longer, but that's how we've been able to get the velocity that we've gotten with clients from an ongoing standpoint, continuing to buy the champagne. But PR is very important for our brand. So we are getting the word out there. We're just not doing a ton of traditional advertising. Champagne's an interesting space too, because not everybody who actually buys champagne, just like with Lamborghinis and Ferraris, Rolls Royce, they're not doing their advertising on Instagram. People that are scrolling all day on Instagram are not the people that are really buying a premium craft champagne. It's typically not the demographic we're heavily focused on. It'll be those people in maybe 10 or 15 years. So we put emphasis on Instagram, but not over the top on Instagram. But there's a lot of other marketing avenues, such as influencers, that you do have to focus on. So we had out of the gate, we had a marketing plan, but that plan has grown legs. And it's like any business, you've got to learn from your mistakes. You got to pivot as quick as possible, and you've got to always try new things and continue to do some very much educated experimenting around different areas that potentially, with marketing dollars, that could potentially add value. Now we had our third champagne arrive. It's our Grand Vintage, a Tête de Cuvée, which is the top of our range, and that completes our range for wine dinners. So now we're doing a lot of these amazing wine dinners. So it's very organic, and that's the key word with what we're doing. It takes longer, but we believe it has the most substance. So things like wine dinners, they really go a long way because they're people that truly appreciate both the food as well as the wine, or in our case, the range of champagne.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the influencers, because it's such a unique, you have such a unique demographic that if you have an influencer that's promoting and talking about your champagne, they really need to have a specific platform that they're on to reach your ideal clients. So like you said, that most people that are your ideal clients are not scrolling Instagram or not scrolling TikTok. So that's really important to think about, where are your people? So I love that you're doing the intimate, wine dinners and having organic word of mouth advertising. I like that.
It's a lot more work, but that's what we signed up for, and that's part of it. And that's why everyone that I hire, we're all very passionate about the craft and what we're doing. We all really love the interaction. We're all very extroverted in what we do. And those introductions and these organic visits are really what it's all about. And we just try to have as much fun with it, because we definitely, we're having to really kind of go the extra mile, but that's what differentiates us and our company from really anything else that's being put in the glass out there, particularly in the bubble space.
I was just watching something about Red Bull, and that's kind of how they started. They didn't just come out with this blasting advertising campaign. They went to small groups, got some traction, went to events like you're doing, and then got some influencers that they thought were appropriate for their demographic to kind of grow from small out to big versus just doing like a Super Bowl ad, coming out. And talk to us a little bit about, we have some other friends that are in this space, and they struggle with getting distribution and shelf space. Have you been having any of the same struggles yourself?
That's a great question. It's a challenging space, particularly because there's so much that's in the market that lacks quality. So the reason I'm mentioning this from the beginning is that we've had a lot of folks. We have master sommeliers. We have some of the very best restaurant groups in the country. We've had retailers. We've had a lot of folks that have they simply look at our package and they think it's too good to be true. They think the story's too good to be true. And they ultimately decide that, well, it takes a lot of prying actually to get in front of them. We've had some really great success in particular with one retailer that is I would say very well aligned with us. It's always about trying to find the same parallel when you have a business and you're an entrepreneur. The biggest conglomerate always looks the best to partner with, but that doesn't necessarily make sense. Like big and small, or new and new, or sometimes too traditional and modern, it doesn't always blend, it doesn't always gel. And for our business, ultimately we found that the approach that Central Markets had and we have it's really just really a great marriage. It's just worked out very well across Texas, with our style and us being very hands-on and the craft nature of essentially of our wine versus, a lot of the big houses, they don't really want the conglomerate driven champagne that's blended from throughout Champagne where they're adding in sugar. They really love the more artisanal style. They love the fact that our staff's present, from Houston to South Lake, Fort Worth. We have our team throughout Texas. So that's been one of our best partners. The wine and liquor store space is admittedly, it's been a bit challenging because, there's a lot of stores. That's a conglomerate driven space. And we've got some really nice partnerships that we have forged, both with some of the top wine shops I would say, not only in the state and the country, such as Pogo's in Dallas, but we also have some really great mom and pops like Rayada Wine Cellars here in Houston, very boutique, very craft little wine shops that do an amazing job of telling the story, because the story is what it's all about, not just being, ultra low sugar. And then, we have partnerships with some other liquor store retailers as well. There's another big one that we're working with as well, but we're not throughout Texas with them. And that's currently Specs, where we have a program that kind of spans different cities and different pockets from Houston now to Dallas and Austin as well.
Yeah. You said something earlier about how it's all about the story. So have you ever thought about using a book to market your wine or your champagne?
I haven't, but my mom is always on me about, she's always on me about writing this book, because she consistently hears about my journey. Sometimes last night I'm pulling up to dinner talking with her. Like, she hears the ins and outs and she knows the ride. And my mom's been riding with me every day, forever. So she knows all the chapters, and she says you really need to write a book. And I'm like, okay, Mom, we'll write a book, but we need to get to that next level.
Yeah.
Let's have that next chapter to write about, as we continue to grow. So absolutely.
We have found that when you have a book, you can put it in the hands of those ideal clients that you want, right? Whether it's the restaurant owners or there's a lot of marketing, what are they called? Mastermind groups, right? So you can you can send a book to the owner of like the Genius Network or whatever, those big mastermind groups where everyone there is a millionaire. So they'll be having private parties and all that. So we found books really do help to market just a different way.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And, for the big box people, sending it to them, they know your story ahead of time as well.
Yeah.
It's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, thanks for joining us today, Matthew. We met, and I just want to say I have tasted the champagne and it's very good. I recommend Champagne Madame Zero. I thought it was excellent, and I've tasted a lot of champagnes in my life and visited France several times. So I mark it right up there in my top 10 list of champagnes. So tell people where they can find you and where they can get the champagne.
Absolutely. So in Houston, we have a really strong footprint, as well as in Dallas. We're in I'll say all in, we're in about 100 different establishments. So there's quite a large list. So I will say madamezero.com is where to find all the locations. Just to highlight a few, here in Houston, here locally, we're in some of our favorites, which really range from the likes of places such as Brasserie 19, places such as Zonti, Albee. We're at some great new staples such as Bari and River Oaks District. And then the range goes from like the Post Oak Hotel and Mastro's on through Vic and Anthony's Steakhouse. So we have quite a range, quite a few staples here throughout Houston. And then some of the really fun little lounges and bars such as Clarkwood, Best Regards. So there's quite a footprint here. And it's about 50 large in Houston. And then in Dallas, we have a really nice range from places such as Drake's, which goes to Tango Room, the Crescent Hotel, the Stoneleigh, the Warwick. Our list is growing. Bob's Steakhouse, but we have quite a few staples out there that we're really excited about in Dallas. And then continuing that momentum with Zaza, Hotel Zaza throughout Texas. They're a partner, whether it be in Austin, here in Houston, as well as in Dallas. So, really growing that footprint. There's other cities that we're moving into, like Six Twists in Fredericksburg. We just moved into Sidebar down in McAllen, Texas. So we have some really unique staples, some great concepts that are a bit more satellite for us that we're working with as well.
You might need to come to Texas to sample this.
Yeah, I was gonna
Absolutely,
say,
but
have
we
you
do
moved
ship to-
into Utah? Have you gotten into
we
Park
do,
City?
well, we do ship to over 40 states. So we are
Yeah, okay.
shipping throughout the US. We do have several states that are up next that we're moving into. And we really got that great footprint going here in Texas. And then we're going to continue that momentum. But yeah, at madamezero.com, we have all of our different states listed, as well as all the local, really, I should say, all the Texas establishments listed as well, both retail as well as restaurants.
Terrific.
Ladies, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for having me.
So we'll post all this information in the show notes, right, Jen?
Yes. Yeah.
All right. So if you want all this information, it'll be in the show notes. And thanks for coming, Matthew. And if you're looking to write a book, remember, we make all our authors #1 bestsellers. Reach out to us at eliteonlinepublishing.com. We can take you from blank page to a bestseller. We'll see you soon. Thanks for joining us. Have a fantastic week, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hey, are you looking to increase your revenue, build credibility, and elevate your brand? This podcast is brought to you by Elite Online Publishing, an innovative publishing and full spectrum marketing company. They will publish and market your book to make it a #1 bestseller. Becoming an author is the best way to market your business. So contact them at eliteonlinepublishing.com today. All of their authors become #1 bestsellers.